Welcome to the AI Music Festival at Bazaar in Brussels. We are very excited today to be hosting this event in the framework of the Ars Electronica Festival. In particular because this AI and Music chapter of the festival is very much in line with Bazaar's mission to connect different disciplines. In a few moments, we will be sharing with you the world premiere of Bop, an experimental music performance by Dago, Sondervan and Claes. Bop is an improvisation that builds on a combination of live coding and adaptive algorithms based on live inputs from an electronic sax. It is a performance for 2 humans and 2 AI agents. And it was recorded right here in this room here at Bazaar yesterday. So what you're about to hear is the recording of that live performance, and you will see also a sort of improvisation experimental live video mix. It will last about 30 minutes, and then we will be back here with Dago, with Andrew, and with Frederic Leblazer for short talk to touch upon some interesting points about AI, machine learning, and creativity. See you in a bit.
Rushing. Sorted. Wolf. Taste. Light. On. A. Mounted. Subsequently. Isochronous. Sorry. Towards. The. Seashore. Of. Isolation. Club stage. The. Din. Of. A. The lately. Unknowingly. A. Joyous. Paleolithic. Waver. A. Curtail. Hat. Tell. Thermal. Insight. Asynchronous. Higher. satisfied. Fanatic. Disaffected. Unfortunate. Burrow. Food. Potluck. On. Discontented. Levitate. Botbop. Thought. Certifiable. Aviator. Shrew. Chomp. Wake. On. Botbop. Aspire. Occur.
Welcome back here at Bazaar. I'm here with Dago Sondervan, who is a drummer and a live coding expert that passed by step making electronic music with generative software Atari in the 90s. Next to him there is Claes, who is a musician, a producer and a researcher that's definitely known for his role as EY player in the Belgian band Stuff. His taste led him to projects that ranging from very obscure and abstract atmosphere to quite straight up techno. And we are here also with Frederick de Blazer, who is the co-founder of EMRG and the author of Notebox. He holds a PhD researching the links between computers and art and the impact of procedural graphic applications on graphic designers' practices. Before starting, I would like to remind you all that you can ask questions. You can just type them in the comment box, whether you're following the stream on Facebook or on YouTube, and they will be passed on. Questions are welcome. We are starting, well, I will start straight away with you, Dago and Andrew, jumping straight into your performance. What we just saw is basically you two working in a collaborative way, in a sort of two humans, two AIs live show in which there are literally 4 performers improvising on each other's creation. So how did you get to this point, and how it all happens on stage?
Well, we were asked by Bazaar to make a performance that involved AI. I also did some performances with live coding here a while ago, so they hooked me up with Andrew, and they didn't know that we knew each other for like 6 years ago. We worked together on a project, and we know each other from the town we live, Antwerp. And we were very happy that they hooked us up, and so we could pick up on working together again. So he used a different environment. He can explain a little bit later. And so we combined it with live coding. And the 2 agents were like programmed. A friend of ours is Casper Jordaans. He's an engineer who works for IMEC, and he works with AI. and he helped us making two friends, Rob and Bob. And Rob is actually our poetry kind of MC, and Bob is how do we call him? A melody creator, something like this. So, Andrew, maybe you can explain a bit more about your environment.
I've been using a patching software since I think 15 years or something. I've been using the program Utilising, Hollyhock, which is a visual modular programming environment. Basically, the program is also called Utilising, and I think it's a good word for what I'm doing. It's like making this plant which does things for you. So actually, I'm recording my instrument. I'm an EWI player, so it's an electronic wind instrument, which is like a digital saxophone controller. So basically, I'm putting out note data, and I can record this data. So I'm not recording my sounds, but the data. And then I've made a program which randomly shifts between small sentences I've recorded, and then because of the nature of the data, the program tracks also the last, let's say, 16 or 8 played notes. So when the program is playing back randomly my recorded phrases, it shifts them to the new notes I've been playing. So this means that actually I'm recording loops, but those loops are very fluent. If I transpose my playing, so if I'm soloing and I'm just going one step higher in another key, transposing, then everything which is running is also following those new notes. And so that is like, I think it's a very naive way of machine learning or something. That was actually what I was thinking about when they asked me, like, okay, can you do something with artificial intelligence? I started looking up some things, and I was thinking, like, okay, in my environment, what would that mean? Like giving me some input which I didn't play, but which is based on what I played, and constantly evolving, which enables me to shift things in a very easy way, because I didn't have any controller. Normally I have lots of knobs and stuff like that, but I really chose to have just like a computer, a system which is running. Even if I played my lowest note on the EWI, which didn't sound, the message triggers actually the AI system, which Casper helped us with a lot. So and then the AI is also feeding input. So it's like this combination of generative adaptive system together with machine learned AI actually. So yeah.
Good. So here I would like to invite Frederick to jump in as we are talking about creation. What's your take on AI augmenting the creative's work, basically?
Yeah, so I come from a visual background. I've dabbled in audio AI as well. The way I see it, the computer has 3 levels of interpreting or working together with you, and I think automation is the first step. It's basically the computer doing the rote, boring jobs that we want to get rid of, and that happens in all environments, but it also happens in music or in imagery. And then you have, and I think that's what we are getting at, we have the AI actually assisting you or helping you or learning from you as a creative partner, where, and I noticed that in the piece as well, there's this feedback that goes on, this conversation that you have where you are playing a piece, the AI is riffing off of that, and then you are also riffing off what the AI is doing and sort of creating this interesting feedback loop. And actually even playing with the AI, because you understand the system, you understand, okay, if I feed in, for example, these specific notes, then it's going to do this or that. So you have this dialogue. And I think it's a really interesting place to be. And I think there's also a third level, which is autonomous AI, where we are no longer, as humans, we are no longer in the loop, and it's just the AI producing its own thing. And maybe we are curating that what comes out of the AI. So we're basically selecting from an almost infinite supply of whether that's audio pieces or Bach pieces, pieces by Bach, or it's visual pieces where the AI is just generating stuff, and it's up to us to select these pieces. Yeah. So, yeah. I was talking to a Japanese calligrapher a few years back, and he said this system is the same in calligraphy. When they learn it, they talk about shu-hari. Shu is basically you with the master and basically replicating what the master does. Ha is going a bit over that and basically making variations on what the master does. And I think ri is the level where you extend what the master does and go beyond what the master has taught you. And I think it's a really nice way of thinking, of looking at what the AI can give us right now and what we're still expecting it to give.
How do the two AIs you interact with during the performance influence your actions, your decision during the performance?
Well, that's more a question for Andrew, I guess. My part wasn't really interacting with the AI. Also, in my live coding environment, I have the same thing as Andrew. I use it to really create variations on ideas that I have. So I also have the feeling that it's a sort of AI which I'm having a conversation with. I'm making suggestions in between a sort of environment that is really like limited. So it comes up with ideas that I can use, and so I'm interacting with those ideas and changing the ways. I think, like Frederick said, like a curator. It's like this is helpful for me to use. Andrew uses like the melodies that one of the AIs is coming up with, and making the most interesting parts that we noticed was when they play together. Actually, what we noticed from the program we are using is like a Magenta module, and it's trained to behave like Mozart in a bit, which was not very useful in the way that we were aiming to do something in that kind of area of Mozart's. But yeah. we could use it by transforming it in another direction, so it was useful for us anyway.
Yeah, it was useful. If we say like the AI, if we're talking about like the machine learned part, which was trained by the music of Mozart, which is actually we have the feeling that it's. Also, it's a particular style we're playing in, and this style is heavily influenced by machines, actually. So, actually, we want to sound like machines. That's the whole point, actually. So it's like a crazy loop to get that. It seems like a bit pointless to train a neural network to sound random, computerized. So that was the thing. Like the things I've been programming was on a one-to-one basis. It's my inputs, so it will sound like me in an altered, mutated way. And this is what I wanted. So I made something with a specific.
There's an intention.
Yes, and also with a specific sound in mind or something. And then comes the AI, which does things which he learned from Mozart. But in this context, I mean, sometimes it was like in the last part where I was playing like more the clavecembal like sound. Then I started the AI and I was like, no, come on, stop. You know, so that's the thing. So that was like, and then like also Dago said, we had some moments in the rehearsals where when we started playing together. Then it was really nice, because then you could feel the difference, because when the naive AI, my own AI, was actually I know what to expect actually. I know it's gonna sound a little bit the same and just shift my melodies. But then when I was playing in duet with the AI, then something I really didn't play came up, and this is really inspiring. And I think this is like the kind of feedback loop which transcends what you can expect from the system. And I think think that's a really interesting thing, which are. But as we speak, it's like we say like it's a toddler, like our little Rob. It's a toddler. I mean, he's very powerful, like you say, like
yes. And also, I might like to add something. We started with the idea to use a different kind of AI system so that we could train our model. But it was really bleeding edge, just ready, made by some universities. And they stopped working on it during the summertime, and I expected to use it right away, which was a bit like too positive from my side, I guess. And so we were aiming to train our own robot, not like Mozart, but more like something else we would suggest. But we didn't have the opportunity to make it work. So, voilà.
I think also it's a lesson in like the more complex the AI becomes, the less playable it becomes. It sort of helps to understand what's going on behind the scenes to be able to influence it. If it's too much like a black box, the system becomes very difficult to control. Also, it doesn't know which inputs trigger what output, and then having that in a live setting, it makes it actually harder. If it really wants to turn it into Mozart, then yeah, you're fighting the AI much more than you're trying to play together.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's like a player who also always wants to go and do its drum solo or something. It's like, no, stop, just come back and play together with the band, not just do your own thing. Yeah.
So AIs are stubborn. That's what we're learning.
Oh
here.
yeah, definitely.
Still related to this performance, well, there's clearly a crescendo of complexity. The sound gets very textured, very multi-layered. Then it dives in very dreamy-like atmospheres, so they're very dense and hypnotic. Then it's back. So my question here is there any of you guiding in these changes of moods and colors? Is the bot leading? Who is leading?
Well, we don't have a leader. We're like a cooperative company. But we aim for music we like. So when we try to code or program, and we discuss the machines are already performing some music, and then we can discuss. Oh, we would like to have more this of that and colors, and so it's a mutual thing that we try to do. So there's not really a leader, but we enjoy the idea of getting to a certain level of involvement between machines, and that they start producing a lot of stuff themselves, so that we can just take a drink and discuss it while they are performing, and so we have a little bit rest and try to decide which planets to fly to.
Yeah, we had the image of a cooking session where you have like some fires, and there's some soup there, and there's some sauce over there, and just it's like it starts bottle
very organic,
like cooking, like very organic. And also we're very fortunate as musicians that we've been music is or the playing particular also. I think it's every kind of music, but for us, like as jazz musicians, you can get to the point that everything seems to fit together, and this is actually a let's say it how it is. It's a transcendental experience. It's not something you can quantify or something. No. It's just like this flow is something where everything fits together. And I think as children of our time, we are searching with things that are here to get to this feeling, because maybe the old ways, maybe they are. We're also searching for something new, and then I think it's really interesting to as musicians to become on a flow where things just happen. And I think that's also it's I think that's transcendental to AI or something, because we don't know what's happening. We're looking at each other and we're like, okay, yes, okay, let's push it a little bit more, and we don't have to say words for that. It's like, okay,
we really get along in that way, because I think we come from a really similar background.
Yes,
which is not really something we often discover with our colleagues. And we have, I think, some patterns we recognize.
Yes, that's true.
That's really mutual, and it's about you see some like Fredrik told me, like you throw some clay to the wall, and then you have to see some images you want to carve out of it. It's like a sculpture, and luckily we it's very easy for us to see the same image.
Yes.
Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, I found that beautiful. We were talking about it beautiful during the performance, that you see that there's this really rough material that gets added into the mix at some point. I think you call it sirens or police.
Yeah,
the police sirens, or I don't know.
It was from like you know, these CB car.
Oh yeah,
car
cool.
things.
And then it's very harsh and it's very out there. And then you see that you're shaping it. It becomes part of this mixture. It gets a bit more rounded off, and it sort of integrates into this mix and then dissolves into this other pattern. Yeah, it's really nice to see.
Thanks.
Well, then we're zooming out from the performing itself, and my next question is about what does an AI learn? Like, what does it takes from the learning process? And as we were saying earlier, does an AI get it the way that a human can get it? Can we, have we have many senses, of course, that we rely upon when to perceive and to learn about the world. Can an AI mimic that, or have something similar, or the analogic?
Yeah, so I see that a lot. So the black box image really works, I think, for AI, because at some point you have to almost trust that the AI has understood what you think it has understood, and sometimes it's completely wrong. I think Google did a research when they took ImageNet, which is a really famous trained image network, neural network, and they tried to ask it, like, okay, what do you now actually see? And things like Deep Dream, for example, came out of that. But for example, if they ask like a halter, which is what weightlifters use, if they ask like, what is it? What do you think it sees? It not only saw the halter, but also part of the arm attached to it, because every picture of that is also with the arm attached to it. So for the AI, those two things were one. It's like a unified thing, and we don't see it that way. So it's learning from a two-dimensional perspective. It's not actually perceiving that in 3D, but then also it doesn't know which part actually belongs to it and which part is not belonging. Maybe it takes all its time examining the noise around it or the background around it, whereas that's completely not part of the whole thing. And we were talking about death metal music, for example. There's a stream of endless death metal music that gets learned. And we were also thinking, like, if you have an AI and you train it on an album of, I don't know, Metallica or whatever group, is that enough? Is everything inside of that album, inside of that CD, is that enough to actually be able to train the whole system? And I don't think so, because there's this entire context that it's missing. And like, do you get it? I was thinking of the teenager who talks to his mom, like, "Mom, you don't get it. You don't get this music." And it's the same thing here. The AI doesn't really get it. It just gets the album and takes it at face value. It doesn't really understand what the music is or what the time spirit was. And that's, sometimes it can feel a little bit soulless, because it doesn't know actually what goes outside of the world. It's basically, it has blinders on and it's only looking at that part.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that thing that is missing can be taught?
Well, we're trying, right? We're giving it more and more information. The latest models for text generation now are trained on the entire internet. That helps, but it also means that it's going to take over our biases, which are inherent. The fact that it's very Western white male biased, the whole AI that we train, and that's extremely problematic in trying to train that. So again, it's learning from its environment, but maybe it's also learning too much, and then it's going to have all that moral issues that we as humans also have. It's going to just take over and repeat that. So yeah, you can give it more context, but that also causes more issues, I think.
The life experience is complexity.
Well, yeah, it's not really a life experience, right? It's learning from a certain point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really wondering if we go 20 years in the future and we still have these old AI models that we trained, if it's still trying to say, oh, Trump is president, and hopefully he's no longer president then, but if he keeps like gaining new knowledge as we do through our life experiences, or if it's going to be stuck with generating Mozart and Bach until infinity, because that's what it's learned in the beginning. So, yeah, I don't know. It's for me, it's super fascinating, but it's almost like we also have to do this opposite movement of unlearning certain things that we don't consider important, and those are really tough questions. Like, which parts do we consider important and valid, and which parts do we consider unethical? So,
and again, who defines who the we is?
Yes,
because
yes.
Again, it's the we. It's a Eurocentric or anyway north of the world.
Yeah, it's absolutely problematic right now, I think. Yeah, and there's so many examples of people trying to game AI algorithms that are used, for example, in grading essays for children, where well, you have students in school and their essay gets graded by an AI, so the essay is no longer read by the professor, it's too much work, so the AI sort of gives it a grade. And students have learned to game that system by introducing more keywords and basically keyword spam, saying, okay, here's all the names that you probably expect, and now the scores keep higher and higher, but the essay is just garbage because it's just basically spam that you're generating, but you know that the AI is going to react positively to it. So that's I think a very negative feedback loop, but it's something that we see as the moment that AI gets introduced into our society as grading us, as basically giving us a score instead of we giving the AI a score.
Sounds like Facebook algorithm.
But it is. That's what they use, right? I mean, you were talking about biofeedback, for example. Like, okay, let's attach an EEG sensor to your brain. And I think Facebook is that sensor that's basically tracking our emotions, but just by how we react, and then giving us more of that, and sort of amplifying these emotions and making them stronger and stronger and stronger. So, yeah, it's definitely not just a positive thing. No,
definitely not. From this, I mean, I really would like to keep zooming out and ask you, all of you, this question is for all of you, how, in the scope of your very different researches, and the different art forms, different styles, different backgrounds, different applications, what is the role of AI for you individually, and how, especially the question is, how do you think that your role as artists and creatives can be enhanced by it and can enhance it? In all this complexity, what's the role of the artist community?
I think AI is assisting humans to work with to do boring stuff. Like if you're a producer and you're in your software, sometimes you're cutting up samples, or sometimes you end up doing having to do 50 times the same thing. That this AI can assist you in making these operations and some maybe not decisions, but mostly operations. Like suggest them, like I can do this for you, and so we can have more freedom to focus on the artistic side of things and not so much the technical side of things, because we've been all sitting on our computer trying to make art and ending up like doing
feels like an office job.
An office job sometimes.
It's
yes.
not all fun.
No.
But some of the fun parts we like to see increased.
Yes, that's it. And so also you were talking about like this text learn thing. That I can imagine that if you can code a program just by, I want a program that opens this program and search for that, and then makes, if you can type to a computer like that, a little bit like, yes, like Space Odyssey, I guess, like HAL 2000, and so he can assist you so you don't have to deal with the boring things. I think that's a really interesting thing. And also a thing we saw was like a sample browser. So we have so many samples, and now all samples are getting, or some samples, or there are cloud-based services, so you have access to millions of samples. So how do you find your way in that? And so an AI can assist you, like if you say like, okay, I'm searching for a snare drum which should be a little bit in that style, or here is an example, search me 10 other snares which are a little bit similar or something. I think AI in this data-driven world where there's so much data, it can help us find our way in this ever-expanding virtual world.
This make me think of a conversation that we had, Frederick, where you brought up this difference between a template system and a costume-made system. In which would you like to expand a bit on that?
I think it's about curation a little bit. I think if we feed it with all samples, everything can easily start sounding the same thing, which might be okay for some applications. But I think the most interesting aspects of AI, and it's something that you also mentioned, Dago, is that you take AI and you feed it with your own stuff. You feed it with your own samples, your own research, your own images, for example, in image generation, and then you let the AI be based on that. So you give it, again, it has a very limited view of the world, but the interesting part is that it's your part of the world, that it can experiment within that part of the sandbox that you think is interesting. In that sense, it's really, I think, augmenting not everybody's creativity, but your creativity, because you understand the system and you sort of have these expectations of what comes out there. So I think AI really works really well if it's not this black box anymore, but if it's maybe as simple as possible, where we can understand what's going on behind the scenes. We know how the system works, and we have some control over it, not in the sense of like, not in an evil sense, but more in the sense of that we sort of have expectations of what the output can be, and it can still surprise us. It might still go a little bit outside of these bounds and generate new inspiration for us. But the things that we feed it are things that we like. I did this experiment with Jukebox, which is a new AI from OpenAI, where they generate music, and I was working with Marco Siciliani on this, generating music. And for some reason, whatever I put in, we were working with 90s techno music. It always went to Western music, because it always wanted to make like a spaghetti Western music, or like country songs. But I like it. You can see it just completely go bonkers after like 12 seconds or something. It just went its own way, and this is like off in the distance, and did its own thing. And while that's funny and it can generate inspiration, it's much less controllable. So I think we are now at a stage where we know what AI can do, but we want to sort of take it back to our own studio, to our own practice, and basically use it for things that we are interested in and have a bit of control over it, instead of just generating fun tweets or memes.
And this somehow, this way of, you were saying that it would be better if it was simple, the simpler the better. That's somehow also very much tied with your work, and with one of the directions of your research that goes very much into the direction of accessibility of these AI tools, no?
Yeah, so there are two aspects, I think. One is understanding what the AI thinks, which is the example of the halter that I gave, is trying to visualize what the AI thinks. And the other thing, I think, is democratization of these AI tools, because they're still very difficult to use. I heard you drop the word virtual box, but for people who are not familiar, it basically means that you give it a container that it can play in, that completely, almost its own PC that's completely set up to do its thing, because it doesn't run on your PC. It runs only in this very specific machine, and you can't touch it or everything breaks. I think we need to go beyond that, where it can just be something that's easy to install, easy to use, accessible to everybody, with without having like a mathematics background or understanding everything that goes on. And then also be able to run on everybody's machine, ideally open source. That's, I think, is really important. That's currently not happening. AI is so, for me as well, even when I know the libraries and I can program, understanding all the things, and they break every 6 months because a new version comes out and nothing works anymore. That's very frustrating to build something on. So you see people just immediately jumping off, and then it sort of peters out because nobody can sustain it anymore. It doesn't work anymore, or it's too expensive to use, or whatever. So that to me would be, I think, the next breakthrough, where AI becomes much more accessible to everybody, and where it's easy to use, it's easy to understand, and you really have a feeling of control being able to use it in any kind of practice.
Yeah, and this democratization would, of course, then impact the artistic practices of artists like you, or visual artists, or whoever artist and creative that would be interested to approach this type of technology. No, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because for now we have the feeling that we are that our the beauty of the code is something that's really inspiring us. It's something which we cannot play. It can do things which no human can play. And for now we have the feeling that the AI is actually coming behind. You have to feed them things you have already done, and then it spits out some things which are a little bit like we did. But it's not coming up with something new. It's not, so we are still finding inspiration in random, in controlled random, conditional random, stuff like that. So that's more interesting to us. So that would be. So I think we're not there yet for like the creative music on stage. It's still.
But on if I may, on that point, I think the combination would be really interesting, because we have those things I like to call frozen random. We let it do random things until we say, yes, that's what I meant, between certain boundaries. But then we could have the AI learn which artistic decisions we choose. Like we want this kind of random seeds we use. And then for us it would be too complicated to remember all the parameters we're using and all those different instruments. But that's something an AI could really be very good at. So I think the combination of those two would be something that might be a winning team.
That's it, because I think really, like when I was playing with the AI, it's you can feel the potential. It's like it's like, okay, it's giving me something I did not play and I actually like it. But then you also feel like, okay, but he has no sense of knowing that I was actually liking this particular point. And if that would be,
then it could learn.
Then yes, and it could learn from that on a personal basis. Then this would be my my accompaniment friend. You know, it's like it could be like an enhancement. Not maybe it's too much to say like another musician, but still, yeah, maybe it can evolve to be that. But it can start like a companion, like. For now, I was able with my own system to play chords, and I really didn't know which chord it would be, but it was a chord which would be harmonious with what I was playing before. And this is already like this, because then you have the same thing that if you're playing with another human musician, he gives you something which you didn't expect, but it sounds good because he's playing with you. And this is the excitement you need to go on further and to be to have inspiration and to be inspired by it. And I really think you can feel the potential. It's yes, it's very exciting for that.
I was thinking that one of the partner is then excited, that's you, but we need a way to make the computer excited about that as well, because it's just generating stuff and he doesn't know, like he's like, oh, okay, I'll generate another one, but it would be cool. It's like, I feel it as well. Yeah, this is going
like
on.
Coaching,
that would be cool.
Computer, yes.
And it's cool. The cooling starts going faster, like.
That would be the point in which the AI get it exactly, as we were saying earlier. What do you think, if you think so, about how the artist community can have an impact on how AI will evolve in the future, in the next future? Do you think that there is something that can influence the bigger course of things.
Well, I would like it to be that way, because you see a lot of stuff happening with AI, and then, like we discussed, Facebook, and then there was some AI they let loose on the internet, and it became very discriminating person. Yes. So that's the scary stuff, and I like the idea that we as artists have an input in AI, and that we in how it evolves, and that we're looking for something we find very beautiful, and hope that something the AI community or like the entity that AI could be would have some of that kind of seeds as well, and not only the ugly stuff you see.
Yeah, because I mean, artists have always had more or less consciously this role of being a sort of lens through which society reflects on itself, and the artists take something, elaborate it in their own way, and produce an output that it's presented to the world more or less.
I also think it's very important because it's like with making a musical instrument. It's not the one who makes the instrument who is playing the music on it. So so we're building our own tools. So we're a little bit like we're reaching towards instrument building, but we're not programmers. So we're still we're musicians, and we try to be technical and try to have to expand our possibilities. But I think it's really important that the ones who are making the AI should not be the ones feeding the AI. Maybe we should it should be also, it could be an artistic endeavor to make the AI do something really pleasing, because maybe the programmer is not an expert on aesthetics.
Yeah.
I think in some way that artists can form the conscience of a society, basically critiquing what goes on in society. And as with any art, using AI or creative AI to critique the issues that we have with AI, the social issues and the social political issues that come up when you use AI in a wrong way, as a way of grading candidates for a job, for example, based on a recommendation letter or whatever, then that can be the raw material that we as artists can use and to indicate that something's wrong, either through humor or through very raw critique that we provide on this, or like a performance. Or so I think there, as an artist, we can engage with AI, and even with pre-trained AI, because then that black box actually, for us as artists, becomes the material that we can use to indicate that it's not all neutral, whatever that means.
Okay, so we still have about 15 minutes, more or less. So I have two last questions for you. The first one is a bit philosophical. And is it, if you think that there is a need for consciousness in order to have creativity?
Yeah, I think one side at least should be conscious while we're making creative works. We can't both be unconscious and make art. So the way that I see it is that the AI can be unconscious, and we can be the conscious one, basically looking at the work and saying if it's good or not, because there has to be critique of the work. You can't just accept everything and put it in a book and just be finished. Like you make a selection, you curate the work that the AI comes up with, and then maybe you tweak the AI. So in that sense, there is a conscious process and a conscious effort going on. What I think is interesting is also maybe switching the roles, where we are actually generating almost like randomness, and it's the AI's job to basically provide critique. There's this interesting work by Dries and Verstappen, where they take just pebbles that they get from the beach, and they let them be scanned by an AI that does face detection, and all the pebbles that look like faces they select out, and that becomes the work. So it's basically all pebbles that look like faces. So it's the AI doing the selection, no longer the human doing the selection. They're just cleaning stones, basically. That's their job. I think at least one side should be conscious. Maybe not both sides. That's not really necessary. But this idea of like it has to be conscious, or like it has to be an complete AI system that understands the world and something. There's a lot of things that are in this interspace between that are really interesting already. It doesn't have to be like fully complete yet before we can actually use it.
Andrew?
Well, you said it's a philosophical question. So, what is consciousness? So, what do we know what it is? Like, are we conscious? At what extent? What is it? What is the definition? There are many definitions. We really don't know. So I think it's that's also very exciting. Maybe the quest for a consciousness, an artificial consciousness, will lead us closer to understanding what consciousness is, because we are saying, like, do you need to be conscious? But are you conscious? We are conscious of some things, but this consciousness is ever expanding. We are learning new things. The AI will learn new things. So the AI is conscious of what I'm putting in there. He's conscious of my MIDI notes. So he has a sort of limited consciousness. But to say my consciousness is unlimited would be really a weird statement, because my consciousness on this moment is also, I hope to expand it ever more, but at this time it's really limited. So yeah, I think it's really deep. If you're talking about consciousness, we don't know what consciousness is actually. So is it awareness? But to what extent? So we don't know. So and I think that's the really nice edge of the artificial intelligence, because when we were working on this project, we also had like very philosophical and even ethical, but at a very philosophical point. Like, okay, but what are we doing, and what is this thing? So it takes us to very even theosophical questions actually.
In the sense that the humans are playing God by creating. What do you mean by this?
Yes, but we are talking about these things, but we don't know we have no definition of these things. What is this to you? What is consciousness for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
so yes, we have to have this discussion, because we're talking about artificial intelligence, but we don't have definitions about those things. It's like psychology. Yes, we are researching the psyche, but what is the psyche? We don't know what it is, but we need it. We need this research, but we don't know what we're talking about. So, and this is, I think this is the main point of life. And now we are doing this with this technology, because we're in this technological society. But those are the questions we were researching with the means we had for a time immemorial. This Homo sapiens sapiens has not changed. We have the same brain capacity as the ancient Romans or the Egyptians or the Indian people. So we have the same hardware, and we have the same questions, but we have another culture. But we're still asking these same questions, and so and to get that we're still asking these same questions. I think that's really valuable.
It is, and of course, the development of this type of technology help us and works a bit of as a mirror, no? Through which we learn also about ourselves. Okay, we went very far in that direction. We have a question from the audience, something in the very opposite direction. It's for you, Dago and Andrew, and the question: if you use a specific method every time, which in turn you also learn by having session, and what would mean that not only the machine is learning, or if you start and progress always in different ways. Do you have a specific methodology or not? If it's improv every time, and if so, are the results still always different?
To the last sentence, yes, it's always different. But we use kind of techniques that we have practiced before, so we know some actions will have some success. In what degree, we don't know, but we can adjust really quickly to come up with new directions. So it's a very flexible system that we use, but we're not aiming for, and we cannot aim for the same results because it will. There are so many different kind of parameters that are generated, and also we use a lot of random in it. So the computer suggests and comes up with a lot of stuff we are not making up. So it's really a joint effort. So it's actually almost impossible to do the same thing twice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and for me, I'm using my techniques, which also give different results every time, even if I do really almost exactly the same. If I just alter one note, the whole system will react in a different way. But I do have sound sets. Like I know that this bass sound will go well with this sound which I use for the chords, and this library is ever expanding. Like the sounds I know that are working, and so in that way maybe the not the structure, but how do you say it? Like the texture will be similar. But the exact music will always be different, a little bit in the same way as playing a jazz standard. It's like the theme will be the same, but exactly. Everything which comes after, like the solos and stuff like that, will always be different.
Yeah.
For my part, also, it makes a difference now. In the live coding community, we know something like the Mexican rules, and it means like it's like a mystic thing. No, it's just starting from scratch from like a white canvas, and you start coding from nothing, and then you start using techniques from your memory, and then it will be even more completely different every time. Now, playing with Andrew, that would be, I noticed that it would be not the right approach because it takes too long of time to make something interesting for us together. So, of course, if I would render the same code every time, it would produce something very similar, but still then with the random possibilities, it would be a variation very easily.
Okay, we have another extremely interesting question from the audience that is following us online. You talked a lot about how AI can enhance, inspire, etc. from an artist, producer's and coder's point of view. Thank you for that. What about the way the music is consumed from the point of view of the end user that we almost all are? For instance, how the use of AI in music streaming, distribution, etc. could impact listeners' music taste, diversity and/or curiosity.
I think that's already happening. If you have a look at SoundCloud, they suggest the tracks you're supposed to like every week. That's probably AI decision which tracks are suitable for you. So it already is having an impact on the music you like or listen to. So I think it's already happening.
Also on a deeper level, it's actually I forgot the name of the system. It was my sister-in-law who gave me this link, and it was a system which where you could also it was like the music was a little bit scripted. When it was let's say if it's evening and you put it on and you want it to and let's say you have somebody over for dinner, it would repeat some parts of the song a little bit more, or would settle the tempo a little bit, or it would do some variations. And I think that's actually it's really interesting, because the music is not just like a thing fixed in stone, but is becoming more fluent and more organic, actually.
That's something we discussed. Actually, I read a paper, I think it was something of the founder of KLF, and he mentioned the death of recorded music. And it means there is so much, and I find it a very interesting approach, because there is so much music put out daily on SoundCloud. Like in the 80s, every week there would be like 20 new albums of the things you liked, and it was really like, okay, you can dig it, you can check it out. But now every day it's like 200 new albums, and you cannot really check them all. So the interesting next thing could be that there is an AI that would generate the music in combination with mood you are in. I think in that will be a future project. It will be not for next week, I guess. But then you no longer have like the search for all this stuff in like these millions of albums put out every day. And I must say, the more music you listen to over the years, you get a bit more critical, and a lot of those albums, I think I don't have the time, and nor
and there's also like a program. It's made also by IMIC, and it tracks your movements, and then it will generate or shuffle your playlist on the BPM which you are walking to. So things like that, like also like we discussed, like helping you choose the right thing, like zooming out in this pile of information of music which is coming out every day. In an ideal situation when there's no ads, campaigns going on, and things which are the evil side of things, like the YouTube algorithms and Facebook. But if it's kept clean, then it could really help you find the music where you're looking for.
Yeah.
And yes, and I think that will happen. It's just like we have to install things which make a barrier, because it's an easy spot to plug your thing in, and if it becomes advertising, then I really think this is it's like this right now, and I don't think it's a good situation.
Frédéric, well, 1 minute to wrap it up.
We noticed that the music industry is also trying to game itself, in the sense that it's trying to put out music that fits into that recommendation algorithm that is actually analyzing the music and understanding what is going to be the next hit or the next thing. And by doing it, it's basically self-reinforcing. It's basically saying to itself, oh, this will be the next hit, because somebody else used an AI to actually figure out what that system is looking at. So it's in that sense, I believe if it comes out of commercial interests, then we will get more into that, and you get this idea of the filter bubble, where you're just listening to music that the system knows is safe and that you're always listening to, which means you're listening to, I don't know, 10 albums over and over on repeat forever. I think also the AI sometimes needs to take a risk and say, okay, I don't know if he's going to like it, but I'm just going to put it out there and we'll see what happens. That would be awesome.
That sounds like an interview I saw from Frank Zappa, who told like the situation in the end of the 60s. This is decision of the record companies. They saw all these hippies with this weird music and they didn't understand it, but it was like, oh, put it out anyway, because there are probably people who are going to buy the records. And then in the 80s, something different happened when the executives came in and they thought to know what the good music was.
The hippies became executives. That was the problem.
They were first the guys who brought in the coffee, and then they had got involved in the decision making of what was good music. And so I think it would be a very good situation that there is no judge who says what the good music actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to give the AI a little bit of room to breathe. Yes.
Yeah, or the AI on a personal level, so it serves you personal, but not with commercial interests. So keep it clean of those kind of inputs, and then it's like, okay, you have a tendency towards like experimental classical music or something, and so it will guide you more towards that kind of music.
Yeah, as I think as long as its intentions, whatever that means, are pure, and it sort of allows you to explore more than just keeping you on that specific safe spot where it knows, like, this is the top of the mountain and I can't get off because he's safe there. He likes all the albums, but I don't know how to get to the next peak and basically introduce you to new music. Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, I'd go all in for that.
Great. So I think that we are running out of time. So we're going to close on that. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here with us today. Thank you for performing. Thank you for this super interesting talk. And well, thank you to you for being with us, and enjoy the rest of Ars Electronica Festival. Goodbye.